Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the new Five Door Media podcast series on culture, where we are diving deep into what makes home service companies thrive. This season, we're exploring the topic of company culture, the people, principles, and purpose that define the heartbeat of service businesses. Today's guest is someone whose journey embodies exactly that. Sam Gembel is the owner and founder of award-winning landscape company Atlas Outdoor, headquartered in Flint, Michigan. Go Blue. He started Atlas in his driveway in 2011 with just a couple of team members, and within 5 years has scaled it to $5 million in annual sales, learning tough lessons along the way. Today, Atlas is a 100-plus person operation driven by people-first culture and operational excellence. Sam is also a leadership coach endorsed by John Maxwell, a mentor to hundreds of landscaping companies across North America, and the host of his own podcast, the Culture Proof Podcast. He's passionate about growth, his own, his teams, and his clients. So we're fired up to have you here. Sam, welcome to the show.
Man, I got to start having you introduce me I got to have you introduce me to my wife. That was great.
I'll do it. Yeah, absolutely. I'll follow you around, and whenever you meet somebody new, I'll just pull that out, right?
Truly an honor to be here, and truly an honor to talk about a subject that is obviously very, very near and dear to my heart. So, when you asked, we couldn't book the episode fast enough, and I just want to add, I don't know when this, is going to get aired. Obviously, we're recording it, but today is actually our 14-year anniversary of Atlas. So,
I love that.
14
Congrats.
years ago today, from the driveway, me and just a couple of dudes, just some knuckleheads wanting to cut some grass and do some landscaping. And I mean, probably next to like childbirth and a couple other things that have happened, in the last 14 years, probably one of the scariest days of my life. And when I went all in, and it's wild to obviously, God had much bigger plans than we did for this business. And to be on the other end of a podcast is truly, truly humbling. And I'm honored to be here and honored to add value to our guests. So let's do it.
I love that. Well, thank you for taking time out of this such a important day. Happy birthday to Alice and everybody over there at the office and your whole team. Love it. Awesome. Well, so I brought you on. You definitely ring my ears when I hear the word company culture and I hear the topic company culture. I've heard you speak a few times at events, as well as obviously just like follow you online. You're one of the few people I know out there that is a Michigan fan too. So I just immediately, I know you're a good human being. So you're qualified from that point. But I mean, today we are talking about company culture, and I think it is why I chose this for a series topic for us, because this is normally how we do our podcast, is a whole season just on one topic, is because I think culture is kind of this mythical thing to a lot of people. I think business owners, when we start companies, whether it's home service or not, we have all the best intentions in the world for our companies, but then we start running companies, right? And a lot of things that we thought we wanted to do or what we wanted our company to be get pushed aside because of what we're doing in the company. But let's just start at the root of it. How would you define company culture? If you could define it,
that should be an ending question.
Well, let's start at the root. How would you define company culture? Not just in home service businesses, but just in business in general. What is company culture?
That's a great question. I feel personally that culture is not something that you can necessarily see. It's something that you feel. It's something that you feel when you walk through the door of an organization. Like, it doesn't matter. Obviously, landscaping is the girl that brought me to the dance, but the same principles apply in any business organization, nonprofit. It doesn't matter. Culture is whatever that feeling is, and it can be good, bad, ugly, toxic. It can be standoffish. It can be welcoming. It's not necessarily something that you see, because there is something that when you're just going from a visual standpoint, when you think of company culture from, we've got like signage on our walls or pictures of our team doing work, or we have core values that are, written on the shop wall, whatever. That's like a visual thing. But then, you can pick up on a weird energy or a good energy when you walk through the doors of a facility or through an operations. And the example I always love to give with it, we are huge Chick-fil-A fans, and maybe a Chick-fil-A, you can argue that maybe Popeyes or another business has a better chicken sandwich, but the culture at Chick-fil-A is what I'm talking about. And when you
Mm.
walk through the doors, the way you're greeted, the way that your order is taken, for the most part, sometimes there's good days and bad days, but most of the time, it's just a welcoming environment and a good experience. And so, culture for me is defined on what you feel when you walk through the gate of an outdoor operations or into the office, and that's it. Culture is the feeling that you get. You can summarize it in a million different other different ways, but when you look at how culture gets applied, which we'll dive into that's where that culture starts to matter. So culture would be defined as what you feel when you walk into an office, walk through the doors of an organization, or walk through the gate, or through the opening of a parking lot where the operation is ran. What do you feel? That's what culture is.
I love that. And I'm excited to dive into the conversation. How do you build something that someone feels, is a tricky thing. You could build something that someone can see, but what we're talking about is a different thing, right?
Yep.
It's something that you can feel. And I'm reminded of that that famous quote, people won't remember what you did for them. They'll remember how you made them feel,
Yep.
and I think that's, going to be a part of the conversation we're having today. Well, let me talk to you about this too. I mean, since this is, and when you responded, you were very excited to talk about this topic. So culture is a big deal to you in your business. I'm guessing it's a big deal in your family as you're a father, and like the culture of your home and the culture of your family. But tell me about maybe what was a key moment or decision in your company's journey, or maybe your journey as a business owner, that fundamentally shaped your company's culture. Was there one moment where you can think like this happened and we were never the same after that?
So the aha moment never, I never noticed the aha moment. Somebody else who I have mad respect for, as a leader and as a coach, as a friend, actually was who pointed it out to me, because I didn't know any other way. Like when our business started, I alluded to it earlier. Today's our anniversary. We started from the driveway. There wasn't a whole lot to offer when you joined the Atlas team. I mean, it was like, hey, we're going to do some cool jobs, I think, and I'm going to pay you. So I don't really know what else we can really do here. And so I'll give that story there where it had never dawned on me what we were doing, but how somebody had said something to me. So a lot of people have heard the story, of our journey, but I'll just give like a 2-minute summary of it. But
Sure.
when we started the business, first year working from the driveway, we did like 330K in revenue, myself, and I think by the end of the year we had 4 or 5 team members. Our second year in business, which was technically our first full year in business, we broke $1 million in revenue that year, and that was like, I never have been much of a goal person. I've always just wanted to be better today than I was
Yeah.
yesterday. I didn't really know what that meant 14 years ago, but back then, I had this dream, this vision to build a business where I said, you know what? If we can have 10 to 15 employees and we can do $1 million in revenue, I didn't know why. I didn't have like a mentor then that showed that to me. I just thought that would be, God's gift to entrepreneurship, and I could pay myself enough to where, my wife, who at that point used to work in corporate America, she had wanted to be a stay-at-home mom when we had our first child, our daughter. And I said, if we did about $1 million, I could pay myself enough to do what I love doing and, kind of replace my wife's income when she quit the corporate America world. And when we did that, our second year in business, one, I wasn't able to pay myself anything because we were growing too fast and that money was just going right back out the door. and it went by so quick that in the second year we did 2 million, and in the third year we did 3 million. And so like that dream goal of that 10, 15 employees and $1 million happened so fast. I'm like, well, if we could do that, we could just kind of keep going. And honestly, there was no secret recipe. We literally just answered the calls, and I just had this gift of attracting great people that wanted to work for me, at least great at that time. Not saying today some of them would be great for what we've built, but at that point in time, people believed in where this thing was going, even though I had no idea what that vision was. But people were obviously attracted to what we were doing. And so when we hit our fifth full year, which would have been like 2016, 2017, we were right around 5 million in revenue, and we like literally had no money. I mean, like we were week by week, we were sending money out as fast as it, was coming in. And, the thing was, is our only system was that we had no systems. And so there was really no way to job cost. We had crews working on one street, and then like next door or another street over, there'd be another crew, because we just never took the time to let our operational efficiencies catch up to the growth. And so in 2017, in the fall of 17, we had attended a conference. And at that conference, I had never even heard of a business coach before. And we went to this conference, and I met a guy that was teaching a class that myself and like 10 of us had went into. We won't even talk on this episode about how our credit card declined booking the hotel, and it sucked, and it was bad. But this was like, I'm hoping to hear one takeaway to take back into my business, and hopefully make me realize like this is what I'm doing wrong. I mean, we had crazy turnover because we had no hiring systems. I mean, there was no training systems. And so we go to this event, I meet this guy, and I find out about this whole business coach thing, and in this room, like I never like to put out, I never have held myself to this title of I'm the owner of Atlas Outdoor. Like even on my Facebook profile and my business profiles, it always says like team coach, or I just don't like the word owner. I don't know. I just never sat well with me. So in this event, a couple of my very not afraid to share their title team members that had at that point were with me. They're no longer with me now, but they were so outspoken in this event that the guy teaching the class actually assumed that they were the owner of the company. And it wasn't till the end of the second day when me and this guy had a conversation, and he's like, I thought that guy, was the owner. And I was like, yeah, he's just, bold and talks a lot. And so me and this guy end up hitting it off, and he learned about our growth and what we were doing. And obviously he was attracted to that, as a coach and a guy that helps people fix things. And we ended up hiring him, even though in my opinion, we couldn't afford it at the time. And he came to our business in spring of 2018. And he actually told me that how he was welcomed when he got there, and how receptive and open my team was to growing. Like he said that to me. He said, Sam, we can fix the operational inefficiencies and streamline things and get some processes built. He said, but the culture and how welcoming and how receptive your team is to growth. He said that's something that like you can't just throw money at that. Like your people are excited to have me here. And so he told me, he said, Sam, one day you're gonna be telling your story on stages, and you watch. There's something special about this place, and I've really never experienced anything like it. And see, me, I didn't really know any other way. It was just what we had always had, what we had always built. And after he said that, and now it becomes, we start to gain some traction. The business is kind of starting to do some things. We won some awards, and we're getting some movement from like late 2018 really through the pandemic. Like we piloted a couple of boot camps for the industry, and
Mm.
I got to go tour and visit some other operations in that period. And that was at that point that I realized, like, I've got some really, really good people here that want to be a part of what we're doing. And so, like, that was kind of the aha moment, but it was because it was naturally for those first 5 to 6 years. I think naturally, the thing that drove the culture at, in my opinion, when I was the worst leader I could even imagine. Like I look at some of the stuff I did then now, and I'm like, I would never hire myself to
Mm.
do my job. And like I was the guy that would like close his door when I got to the office because I had a million things to do. And somebody would knock at the door and I'd be like, seriously, what do you want? Like I got a lot of stuff going
Mm.
on. And I think about that now. I'm like, they just wanted to talk to me. They just wanted to maybe ask how my day was going. And so, looking back at it, it didn't even matter because the culture is what kept them there. And the only thing that I can say is that we were building something. And I've asked a few of my, 12 and 13-year tenured team members that saw some of those crazy years. And I asked them, I said, man, what kept you guys around? Like when we had horrible turnover, I won't
Hmm.
even dive in on some of the problems that we were having, but I said, man, what made you guys want to stay? And their answers were just pretty darn awesome when they said, Sam, even though it was wild, like we knew you wanted to change things. We knew that by you, bringing a coach in, by you asking questions, we were at
Mm.
least holding team meetings to talk about how we can make stuff better. So people felt like they were vested. So, I think first and foremost, I want to make sure our listeners have takeaways from this. It's really just building something that's bigger than yourselves, and I think that's what that started the culture when people realized, like, we're really making a difference in the communities we're operating in. We're really making a difference in the employees' lives that are calling this place home. And so I know that's a long answer to the aha moment, but there wasn't an aha moment. Like the aha moment was when I realized that we actually had something. And then now, fast forward to a takeaway for the listeners is, you can have the greatest, most fanciest trucks in the world. You can have the best written documents, SOPs, employee handbooks, onboarding, whatever. You can have it all. But if your culture doesn't support those things, you might as well just throw them in the garbage can. You might as well just get rid of those beautiful trucks and buy some beaters because your employees are just going to beat the hell out of them. So building the team up to yeah, I'll say this now that I am such a culture coach and a culture advocate. I think culture can be built by holding people accountable when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, not honoring the values of the business, not
Mm.
honoring whatever the standard is, whatever the mission is, whatever the vision is. You build culture by holding people accountable when they're not doing that, and by praising the good when people are doing good stuff. And that's it.
Yeah.
You can have one employee or 100 employees. And if you do those two things, you will build a culture that people want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's not always what you are doing sometimes, or it's not calling out what you are doing. Sometimes it's also calling out what you're not doing.
Mm.
It can be like even more powerful moments, right? So, okay, you had a culture, you didn't realize it. You had a culture before you brought this business coach in, which really leads me to be asking the question. I want to know pre-Atlas Sam. What about like when you were? Was this your first company that you had?
It was, yep.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
were an employee before.
I was an employee before. So I'll go right back. We'll go right back to the beginning. What the heck? All we got's time, right? So,
Well, yeah, I want to know because obviously you were unintentionally teaching culture,
yep,
right? Because
so
there
true.
was something there. So who intentionally taught you culture when maybe you didn't even realize you were being taught culture before you started your own business?
So grew up inner city Flint. My mom was a CNA, aka my dad would refer to her as a professional butt wiper.
Yep. Got it.
And my dad was like a handyman, jack of all trades, master of none,
Got it.
window cleaner, painter, lawnmower, whatever. And so myself and two sisters, we grew up super humble, like City of Flint schools. In high school, I met my high school sweetheart, now my wife, at Flint Central High School, and her upbringing was very similar. Hers was more like foster care. Her grandma raised her. Again, though, very very humble beginnings for both of us. And I remembered growing up, like my mom, my parents had the caller ID, and like you'd get the unavailable calls calling, so that's the bill collectors, and my
Yeah.
parents would be like, don't answer, don't answer, and I just remember them always like running and hiding from problems. And I was a Kmart kid, one new pair of shoes a year. You make them last.
Kmart kid.
and
Yeah.
and so when I met my wife, I was 16. Nobody would ever know it, but I'll put it out there, she's 2 years older than me. So she was a junior when I was a freshman, or I'm sorry, a sophomore. And we met, and I'm like head over heels for her, right? Puppy love, first crush. And we became like really really close friends in high school, and kind of started to date. I ended up going to prom with her, to her senior prom, and I was a junior. And then she graduated, and when she graduated and just went to community college, like I went into my senior year and I was like, school is dumb. Like I had my reason for being at school. Like I
Was her.
watched how my parents struggled, and I'm thinking like I just want to get a job. So I ended up dropping out of high school. My dad was, man, he was pissed. My dad's like, what are you doing? Like both of my parents have passed away, and I like found some letters that my dad wrote me, like, son, you've got a whole life to like chase girls, and you're chasing this girl. And I'm like, hey dad, look who my wife now, 2 kids, all glory to God. But I ended up moving out when I was 17, moved in with her. She was taking care of her grandma at the time. I got a job at the Flint Journal back when they actually had like physical newspapers. I got a job at the Journal, and I worked. I typed my way into a customer service job. Like you're supposed to have a GED or a diploma, but that was back in the AOL days, so like I could type super fast,
Yeah.
and so I could type like a bunch of words per minute. And so I got a job in the customer service department, and dude, I loved it. Like being in, like, I had to dress up a little bit for work. I got my little badge that said Sam Gembel on it. I thought I was so cool, right? And I did that for a couple years, and ended up um, getting a job for a local lawn care company when I was 21. My best friend at the time, he had worked for this company, and he's like, hey, they're looking for people to cut grass. And I had mowed some lawns for my dad, like with a 21-inch push mower, but like I'd never commercially cut grass before. But I was kind of tired of being in the office. I was making like $12 an hour at the time, which wasn't bad back then. And so I ended up interviewing for this job cutting grass commercially. And ironically, because I had a driver's license, I got a job as a crew leader. So this is like
Qualified. You got a driver's license.
yeah,
You're
like we're
qualified.
talking 23, 24 years ago, a driver's license was a superpower. That's not just a thing of today. I got a job professionally cutting grass. It was a smaller company, but man, did I love it. Being outside, instant gratification. I'm a results dude, so like I could turn around and look at my lawns and see like my stripes, and I just fell in love with doing the work. And I did that for a few years, and about 4 years into that journey, so we're talking like 2005. That was when me and my wife, we had moved out the ghetto, and we moved to the suburbs of Flint. We moved to a little town called Davison, Atlas Road. You'll see how the story starts to connect. We moved to a little ranch on Atlas Road. Did it before we got married. That was odd, but we bought a house before we got married. But my wife was now going to U of M, go blue. And so she's like, we know we're going to be together. Well, we don't need to get married to like prove anything, but so we can wait. But I just felt like she's graduating college at the end of '05. Like she's kind of like on the end of that. So, we should probably get married. So 2006, we got married, and kind of in there, I started to like work my way out of being a lawn foreman, and I kind of started like training new
Mm.
people. And again, it was a smaller company, but obviously my boss recognized that I had gifts, and so he had me like training the new people when they came on. And the thing was is I didn't like that. I just wanted to do the work. So
Mm.
because I enjoyed cutting grass so much, in 2007, I bought my first zero turn. And when I would get done at work by 4 or 5 o'clock, I would picked up a couple neighbors where we lived at, and I just started cutting my neighbors' lawns, and really didn't. I had zero thoughts of ever like making a business out of it. Right? I mowed lawns
Sure.
for beer money, and I was a drummer, so I was making some money in some bands. Plus, I had the day job making I don't even know 50, 60 grand a year, whatever it was, and. So my wife worked, corporate America. She graduated from college, got her bachelor's in business. So she had like more of the corporate job. So we were doing okay. We had no kids. Like we did all right for ourselves. And
Mm.
mowing lawns up and down Atlas Road, 3 lawns became 5 lawns, 5 lawns became 10 lawns. Now I'm like having to buy a little trailer and go cut some lawns a couple miles down the street. And so fast forward 2010, my wife, we had our daughter, and my wife, she got her 12 weeks FMLA leave, and she didn't want to go back to work. So she, hey, is there any way we can like make it work? And so I'm looking at the job I had, and it was not very like the company, we never grew. Like we never were anything more than just I think at the peak, I remember there might have been 15 to 20 employees. And I remembered how my boss, even though he was such an inspiration and an influence to me, to he remembered me, coming. He knew my upbringing. He knew where I came from. And he gave me an opportunity when I didn't have, I had no right being, a quote unquote manager. But he took a chance with me, and he helped me, he kind of pushed me to marry my wife because he's like, you're playing house.
Mm.
And so, he was a good influence there. But when it came to being a business owner and the way that he led the company or lack thereof, I wouldn't say that I learned what to do with opening my own business, but I learned what not to do. And
Mm.
so, 2010, when my wife, she wants to quit her job, I'm like, all right, I'll just pick up some more lawns. We'll replace that. We get into spring of 2011. I'm a dad, my wife's now a stay-at-home mom, and I'm kind of looking at like the opportunity to make something of all these customers that I have. And I remember going to my boss, and I said, hey, like I don't know if I can keep. And again, he was a friend and a mentor, and I said he knew
Yeah.
I mowed some lawns on the side, and I said I don't know if I can keep doing what I'm doing with my Atlas Road project and then also working here. And he said, well, I think you need to make a choice. And it's got to be one or the other. And I'm looking at like the company, and I'm going, man, like we haven't grown. If anything, we've regressed. And I'm like turning away customers because I can't keep up with all my little Sam Gembel referrals. And my wife was, dude, and she still is my best friend and supporter to this day. Like, she said, man, Sam, I just feel like she's been she's had her faith a lot longer than I have. And she's like, I just feel like God is like telling me that you need to do something with this business. And you know what, we'll figure it out. Like if we got to move to an apartment, whatever, like I feel like you need to quit your job and go all in. And so June 10th, I announced to my boss that spring that, hey, like start working to replace me
Mm.
because I'm going to pursue, and I didn't even have a name for it yet. I'm going to pursue this business on Atlas Road. And, so I think he just didn't think that I was going to leave. Like, I think he was just kind of in denial about that. And I think there's a big leadership lesson in that as well, that, when people talk, listen. And
Mm.
so I think he just assumed that like I wasn't going to go anywhere. And like every day that I would go into work and like punch the clock, like my heart was gone, dude. Like I was ready to do something.
You were
I
gone.
was
Yeah, you
out,
were out the
and
door. Yeah. Yeah.
I would have viewed myself as a toxic employee. Like I was
Mm.
not there. I was physically there, but like my heart, my brain, I was wanting to do something with Atlas. And so June 10th, I put a date on it. It was a Monday, and I said, hey, like I'm not going to be here that day. And that was the beginning of it. So, you know, to high school of hard knocks, you know, high school dropout, never really, you know, I saw the way that I saw the way my parents struggled, and I just said I never want to be like that. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, the way that we're raised determines the direction that we go, whether that's good or bad. And you know, I saw my parents struggle, and I just prayed, and you know, found we could talk about faith a whole nother episode, but you know, I knew I didn't want to be like how they were. So you know,
Mm.
everybody always like, I'm on, and humbly said, dude, I hate even talking about this, but you know, I drive this beautiful Duramax Denali HD truck with a lift, and it's just a stupid truck. Like I shouldn't, it's way overkill for what I need to do with it. And
Mm.
like, I think it's just somewhere in me that like, I grew up having such crappy vehicles our whole life that like it means a lot to me to drive a nice vehicle because, you know, my dad, if he got into a wreck, dude, duct tape and some
Yeah.
rope, and he's going to fix
He's the
the
handyman.
vehicle,
Yeah.
and we're going to drive it. And so now like that brand, that good, that beautiful fleet, we take that so serious. And I think it's just because I never had something that I, you know, that I could be proud of. And you know, I think about that even with like our team rewards that we do, and our team member of the month, and all these different programs where people are put on a pedestal. And I think to myself, like, I never had anybody tell me good job, Sam, ever.
Mm.
And so when I think about that with our team, and when they get publicly praised and recognized for a great job, you know, people, owners get so afraid to put their team out there because they have this fear that like, well, if I put their name, somebody's going to find their Facebook and try to steal them from me. I'm
Sure.
the exact opposite. We put our people on a pedestal, and if they want, I'm sure they do. There's bullseyes on all their backs. I guarantee there is. But if somebody wants to leave because somebody offers them $2 more an hour because Atlas trained them and cultivated them, you know what? You deserve them, because if they left for that, we never had them to begin with. So
Sure.
anyway,
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question in a good
100%.
fashion.
And loved hearing more of your story. But man, you could have just told me I'm an entrepreneur's kid. You know, I grew up in a business owner's home, and because I'm the same thing. I grew up in a business owner home, and people ask me, where'd you learn about leadership? Where'd you learn about culture? Where'd you learn about people? And I'm like, man, my dinner table growing up. I learned so much just from like hearing my dad talk, and but also like part of your story, like what you said, I learned maybe more what I didn't want to do more than what I, you know, did do or did want to do.
My
And
12-year-old son knows how to read a P&L. He knows what
yeah,
EBITDA means, and like he's not afraid to hear the word million, like the number
yeah,
million. That's not like, so he's gonna, you know, they're picking up on our cues, and that's what I want.
100%.
I want him to see the way we lead in our business. I want him to see the way I treat my wife. I want our daughter, you know, who has total, like, our son is all entrepreneur, dude. This kid goes around our neighborhood and gets people to give him pop bottles, and he'll go like, dad, I
Oh
made
wow,
$68 in 38 minutes going door to door getting bottles. I'm like, dude, I love this
that's a
kid.
good hourly rate right
I love
there.
it,
Keep it
dude.
up.
Like, what's your profit on that? Like, I love
Yeah.
it. So anyway, yeah, I totally, my upbringing and lesson for, I would say, 28 years of my life. I will say, you know, my parents, we never went without, but there was never any abundance. We never went on a
Mm.
vacation, none of that stuff. And then with the jobs I had, like, I never had a leader that knew the way, that showed me the way, but I did see things that I learned from to go, I would never do that. And so, you know, now, yes, through some of those years of growth, I was a leader that I don't think people enjoyed following, but they still believed in it, and the culture thankfully carried us through over those years. And now I'm a firm believer that culture eats strategy for lunch. So if you're empowering your people, growing your people, holding them accountable for the bad, praising the good, you will build an award-winning culture. And again, it doesn't matter what size business you are. If you've got 1, 2 employees or 1 or 200 employees, that's what matters most.
I love it. And I don't know, from just hearing your story, I think you're hard on yourself in those early years of Atlas, saying like, I wasn't a good leader. I, wasn't doing anything. But it sounds like what your team did see in you is that you did have a mindset. You had an abundance mindset. You had a better mindset. And like, sure, you might have been grumpy some days, but like, who isn't? But at the same time, that showed you cared.
So
If grumpy is also combined with no action, it's a different type of grumpy.
So
but if
true.
you're grumpy combined with action, that's showing you're caring, and like you want it to get better, not just for you, but for everybody.
That's gold for sure.
So maybe you're
for
too
sure.
hard on yourself in those early years. You were showing them something. But I mean, let's talk about you. So you are scaled now to where you're at. I want to talk about maybe what is one cultural challenge that you've had to face in scaling and now where you're at now, and maybe like how did you overcome it, because running a culture for a 7-figure 1 million top line revenue business and below, I'm guessing is very different than running a company culture for somebody who's over 5 million and scaling.
Yep.
So what are some challenges that maybe popped up that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, that's great. And that's and that question I get asked a lot, like for, what's if you could just leave one golden nugget of something that's been a takeaway, over the years of growth and the mistakes that we've made. And by the way, like fast forward to today, we're about 110 employees. We have 2 locations now. So yeah, it's definitely there's been a lot of changes. And actually the mistakes that we made in those early years of, call it $1 million revenue and under business, when you're scaling your business and growing, you look for the easiest processes and systems and people, and you work with what you have at the time to get you through. And my biggest leadership lesson that I made very, very early on in scaling was I put people into leadership and management roles because of their ability to get the work done. It wasn't because, I knew how to cultivate these great leaders. Like, they were good at the work. And so I put them in positions where, truth be told, they probably honestly really never even wanted to be there, but I like talk them into it. And, so that was leadership lesson number 1, is no matter, you're 7 figures and under, or, it doesn't matter, 10 million ish. It's putting people in roles that really they have no purpose being in. And so at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. So that was lesson number 1. But lesson number 2 was keeping them there, thinking that over time they would get better. And so, when I think of those, when we were at that, that $5 million size and bleeding cash, trust me, it was not because Sam was doing everything. I had managers for everything. I literally, if there was a role that could have a manager attached to it, we had them. And I remembered, like, just some great giants that I've had the privilege and honor of like coming in and seeing our operations and picking it apart for me. And I remember one of them said that to me. He's like, "Man, Sam, like you're fat." And I'm like, "Bro, just call me, like, I'm trying to work out here, man. Like, what's up?" He's like, no, like, dude, you've got a lot of people. Like, I can't believe how many people there are, like, in this office. And, so looking back at it then, less is more. I would have, if I would have just had like 1 or 2 people and we could have rode that thing to the moon, and they, when there's the more fat you have, the more hiding places there are. So, you're better off to be lean and mean with people. There's no reason to have job descriptions because it's whatever the frick you got to do to get the work done. But when you start to get fat and start to get fat and start to get fat, and now you're kind of like looking for stuff for people to do. And so, one of the reasons in some of those cash strapped years, yes, obviously our work was not, when we turned the scoreboards on, we learned that we were making 80% of our profit off of 20% of our customers. And so, that was one side, but the other side was we had the infrastructure of like a $7 to $8 million company. And so, we had a choice. We either scale it, figure it out, start selling more work and building the systems out to support a $7 to $8 million company, or we needed to start getting rid of people and leaning back on the middle. And nobody wants to do that. Like, how do you call yourself a great a culture proofed business when you're firing people because of your bad mistakes that you made? And so for us, it was easier just to say, you know what, let's figure out prices, let's raise prices. And I had a couple of people on my team that were like, they were all in. And they were ones that were like, what can we do to help fix this thing? And so, looking back at it, I really do feel like 19 and the first part of 20, like when the pandemic kind of hit, that kind of exposed the cracks in our culture, and it kind of brought the people out that were hiding in the hiding spots because of our fat. And I really do feel like 2020 was like our breakout year. I mean, it sucked because it was the pandemic and Michigan was bat poop crazy during that, but really we have been on this like upwards trend since the latter half of 2020 and every year since, back growing about $1 million a year. But it's better growth, it's better work, it's better clients, it's better culture. And we're at, we're hitting the pain line again in that 10 mil range of my leaders are thinking like $7 to $8 million leaders. And now they need to be thinking like $20 million company leaders. And so that's, what a problem to have, but it's a big problem. I mean, it is a big problem. Like what got us here won't take us there. And
you said it before I was going to. I was about to drop that same line.
Yep. Yeah. So it is another pain line, and like any aspiring to grow businesses, like there's pain lines and multiple different thresholds with that, where we have to push through and learn from it and grow from it. And we just kind of skipped the first 5 of them, through the sales. Like sales were never our problem. Like people wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And looking back at it, like I thought it was some big braggadocious moment, like how quick we grew. But when I get in the room with the $150 million business and I'm talking to those owners, and when they humble me by saying, well, the reason you grew in your sales is because you were hiding from your problems. Sales were a dopamine hit for you from actually diving into the crap that you needed to do. Selling is easy. And I'm just like, dude, that just shuts me right up because it's freaking true. When we had all those cash flow problems and couldn't make payroll by the Friday, instead of diving into where we were losing, I would just go sell some projects, get 20-30 grand in deposits and make another payroll. And so it got us through, but it never it won the battle, but it didn't win the war. And so looking at all those things, like I appreciate you saying, don't be so hard on yourself, but I really do, credit the fact to like not really having people that kind of, there was no coaching programs. There was no, we obviously, you've heard of Conquer before, which is no longer around, but there was no Conquer when I was going through some of those dark years. And I got my first mentor in 2013, and he was about a $15 million a year business. And I met him. I say luck, but it was totally a God thing. And he was the one that was like trying. I read our emails every now and then, and him, he's reading my P&L and going, "Why are you doing this? Why is that like this?" And instead of like taking a deep dive on all the red writing he had on the P&L, I would just go sell more work because I thought that's how you fixed your problems, with just more sales. And looking at it now, like I probably spend more time in our business on the operational side, wanting to just keep our efficiencies caught up to our sales. And it's still not happening. Like sales, like my business development team and my sales team and myself too. Like that was I love to sell. I love people. I love customers. And so, I put myself out there and more sales come and more opportunity for acquisitions happens. And like,
Mm.
I'm just, so we're trying to get better and learn to say no a little bit more. But yeah, there was no like aha moment on that end. And yeah, I could talk about that stuff forever, but
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's because it's the age old lesson. It's not what you make; it's what you keep,
oh my
right?
God.
And when you start realizing why you're not keeping,
Yep.
you can make some pivots from there.
I used
Okay, I want to ask
I used
you.
to
Or
say
sorry, go ahead.
it's a lot easier to, and I still will agree with this, like because obviously I'm blessed to get to coach some great businesses all around North America, and I will say it's one of the things that I struggled to teach is sales. Like people either want the product you're pushing or the service you're offering, or
Sure.
they don't. And I will say it is a lot easier to fix problems when you got the sales. If
Mhm.
you can prove that at least people want what you're offering, we can work the other stuff out. And I've only learned that through, real world experiences. So,
Yeah, for sure. I want to know if we asked, let's say I was in your office right now, and your crews are rally right getting back to the shop, right, getting finishing their day, and I asked your frontline team, what is the culture like at this company? One question: what do you hope they'd say, and what do you think they'd actually say?
that's a great question. I think, I think they would say that it's tense. I think they would
Mm,
say that it's very tense. Like there's always, and I'll say because I know our culture and I know our retention and all that, and it's not perfect. But the reason I say tense is because people, there's accountability, and so people know that like they can go get a job anywhere, and so they probably think like, man, we get in trouble for cutting the sleeves off of our shirts, or like if a truck gets dirty, it's getting stopped at the gate, hey, that's got to go to the car wash and get pressure washed. And like we're not allowed to,
mm,
they're not allowed to smoke in trucks, they're not, there's got to be on time for your shift. And there's things there, like we're super meticulous about performance evals. And so I think I use the word tense because I feel like we're not loosey goosey. And I think people think that they don't want to be held accountable. Like I want to go to work where it's fun. But when you realize that when people want what you're offering and there's opportunity for growth, that whenever people that have left, and people have left, I can't tell you how many times I see an email come across our leadership group that says, hey, Daniel, left to pursue another, industry, whatever. And, he wants to come back because even
mm,
though like it might seem like we're hard on people, at the end of the day, people, they want to be held accountable. They want to be a part of
mm,
something where they're held to a standard, and they want to be a part of where they're valued. They want to be a part of where there's opportunity for growth. And that's the struggle point for the small businesses. And that's probably why I'm so passionate about helping the smaller business owners, is because I know what that struggle is. If you've only got, if you're listening to this and you've only got 4 or 5 or 6 employees, like there is no vision, there is no big mission to accomplish. You're typically hiring people and you're doing what you can to keep them. And so, my advice for those business owners is you can't hire people that are coming in and all they ask about is what they're making. Like you
mm,
need people that believe that there's going to be growth, that there's going to be opportunity someday, and then it's your job to create that opportunity. Like if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to grow, then honestly, I hate to say this, but you don't deserve to have great talent on your team, because great talent deserves great opportunity. And so
mm,
if you're not, people deserve to be led well. And so if your organization, if you've hit where you want to be, Nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking owner operated or lifestyle businesses. Like I think, it's you can build something that you should be proud of, but attracting, recruiting, and retaining and building a culture that people want to come to every day, you're gonna struggle with that, because typically in a smaller business, you're hiring people that come in and they think, what's in it for me? If you can find growth minded individuals to join your team, and they'll come in with the mindset of, what can I do to help this thing grow? What can I do to be a crusader here? That you're in. Now, change your interview process with questions. If you have an interview process, change your onboarding and your interview process to ask growth minded questions. And the reason that most business owners don't do it is because you're afraid of growth yourself. So when you're not going to go ask questions, because then you're going to have to actually do something about it. So that's the challenge there is, when, like, now when you start to hit a lifestyle business scale, 1 to 2 million or 1 to 3 million revenue, people are going to start wanting to come to your business to look and go, what's in it for me? But if you can continue to hire growth minded individuals through the lifestyle cycle, getting into more of the enterprise style business, and you can get crusaders on your team, dude, watch out. And even through those, the team members that are like, man, it's strict, but you know what, we take time to have fun. I mean, like yesterday, obviously we're recording this, but we did a Chick-fil-A breakfast, and there was a time when we would do those team appreciation events, and I would get 50 people that would come up to 40 people, 30 people, 20, whatever scale. We used to go to Tigers games early on. I look at old pictures. We always did appreciation events because I genuinely, these people are trading their time, to me. And so we always done stuff like that. And we would get done and everybody'd be like, all this appreciation right there, thank you, Sam. Oh, I love what we're doing. I love where we're going. And now, like, there's 110 people, and I might get 10 that come up and shake my hand. I don't even know probably 40% of our team members now. It's so crazy. But they'll come up and shake my hand and thank me or thank my wife, but not everybody. And there was a point where we're kind of like, man, these people are starting to take advantage of our generosity. But what I've now realized, though, as time goes on, it's not that they're taking advantage of our generosity. It's just part of our culture. Like, people just know that
it's expected.
It's expected. There's no motive, right? Like, if you're listening to this and you want to start and you need to start doing things to show your team appreciation, when you first start to do it, you're going to get resistance. You're going to get people going, that mother lover wants us to work on Sunday. That's why he's buying us breakfast. They're going to assume there's a motive. And most of the time when that happens, most business owners and leaders back out because they're like, I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten those messages. I tried the breakfast. I tried the team member of the month. I tried creating core values, but people thought they were a joke. They will until you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And it's got to be consistent where people don't feel like there's a motive tied to it. And now it will just become, you'll become an organization where people just feel that they feel valued to be there. And maybe that value is through those appreciation events, or maybe that value is because, you're taking the time to know the condition of your flock and know what people's goals are and try to help them get there. And I'm a firm believer that we are successful when we hit our goals as leaders, as business owners, depending on who's listening to this, as leaders, business owners, we are successful when we hit our goals. We become significant when we can hire people and lead people on our team that because of us hitting our goals, they're able to hit their goals. And once you've experienced as a leader even the slightest taste of significance, you'll never settle for success ever again, ever. And that, I think that culture and that cascading through an organization is what will take you to the next level.
I love it. Love it. Oh man, so much of this is so good. One question I want to ask every guest, and I want to try to keep it one sentence. Your answer for this, because I want to make it impactful. 10 years from now, somebody comes up to you, or somebody's asking you now. In 10 years, what do you want your culture to be remembered for at Atlas? What do you want the legacy of the culture of the company that you're building to be?
When I worked at Atlas, I'm speaking from an employee perspective. When I worked there, since I've worked here, um, I've always been valued. I've always been valued. Like I never want people to feel like they are, and I don't care how big we get. Like, I don't know where this thing's, honestly, there's no stopping point, right? So we could, in 10 years, we could have 300 employees. I really don't know. And so I want, at the size we're at and at the size whatever God's plans are for this, is I want people to know that our organization, we are people of value that value our people. And that's it.
People of value that value our people.
That's it. And if you were to ask me, Sam, what is something that keeps you up at night? And there was many years where it was, cash flow, and I, there's still, I mean, obviously we've been growing our business for 14 years. So we've had 14 years of cash flow push, right? So that's always been something, but it doesn't keep me up at night anymore. But if you were to ask me now, what keeps me up at night, it's honestly that as we continue to grow and we continue to scale and we continue to attract and recruit and retain. And I mean, I feel like we're hiring a new person, every other day. I mean, where there's so much growth happening, and we're always looking to get rid of the B's and C's and bring on more A's. And my keep me up at night thought is that as we continue to scale and grow, that I hope that those values don't get diluted, on the front lines. Like the things that I value most as the senior leader of the organization, that I push to cascade into my direct reports and push them to cascade that into their direct reports. And we're right, there's layers, there's field managers, there's crew managers, there's foremen and lead techs and all these different layers. I don't even know how many crews we have now, 30, 35, 36 crews. And when I think about the new person that comes in, that maybe it's somebody that, I go to church with or whatever, I'm not even using that as, the thing, but maybe it's a child of a parent that we're friends with, in our school district. I worry that, people, they know Sam, they know my integrity, they know my ethics, they know what I represent. That same thing somewhere in the layers of the organization, it gets diluted. And because of that, that's probably why I am so hard on holding our people accountable, because, I'm like, I'm saying it, but everybody should be thinking like that, not just Sam.
I love it. Hey, well, something fun we do on this podcast to wrap up episodes is, I'm a big fan of would you rather style questions.
I love it.
So we have come up with some culture would you rather questions, and here is yours that you are lucky enough to answer today. Would you rather have a 20% increase in profit this year, but lose 2 A players, or maintain the same profit, but your top 10 people say it's the best year they've ever had working with you?
That is such a good question.
It's tough. We don't play around here.
These are tough questions. That is a great question. I would say I believe that 10% of a watermelon is better than 80% of a grape. So if we're continuing to grow and creating opportunity for people, money is a tool. So money is a tool to build and provide for lives of people to grow. So, I would say it would be dependent on why I was losing those A players, because if they're A players, we shouldn't be losing them. And so A players want to work for A leaders. So if I lost an A player, I would say, who on my leadership team is a B leader, because A players don't work for B leaders. And so, looking at that, I would never trade money for people. I would never trade money for character. And so I would rather have less or stay where I'm at if it meant other people were having opportunity to provide a better life for themselves. So I'm not trying to avoid the question.
Sure.
But I would, to answer it, I would always stick with keep my people and be pushing, because if you have A players, they're going to help you. They're going to help you fix the problems that you might be experiencing that's creating less profit.
100%. Great answer. Great answer. All right. Well, hey, Sam, thank you for sharing not just your insights, but really your heart for leadership and people on this episode today. I can guarantee the people listening to this are going to take back so many nuggets of how they can, maybe start looking at culture differently inside of their home service businesses, or maybe just look at it for the first time, and know, I think one thing you've talked a lot about today, which is so true just in business in general, that everything is a practice, right? You're not going to have the best culture day one of you trying to have a culture. It's something you got to tweak, something you got to work on, and something you got to build. But thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Love this conversation. Where can folks, find out more about you and what you're up to these days?
Absolutely. And I'm just, consistency is key. Like, that's success can be found in consistency. So, if you're feeling discouraged, or you're feeling like, man, I'm so far gone from where I want to be. Like, there was so many years where I would pull in the parking lot and bawl my eyes out that I'm like, this thing has gotten away from me and there's no way I'm ever going to fix it. And here we are today. So yeah, I am honored to, it's cool to jump on podcast and talk about, how great things are, but really, we can impress with our strengths, but we connect through our weaknesses. And I through those years of growth, through even the growth we're doing right now, we learn from our mistakes. And if I can help people, the reason I'm so passionate about personal and professional growth and development and leadership is because I know that everything, gets better and rises on us as great leaders, or it regresses on bad leadership. And anything that I can do to help, our leadership community, your leadership community get better, I mean, it's an honor to share. So I'd love to connect with any listener. It sounds funny to say, but I have my own website. It's samgembel.com. So you can jump in there and you can subscribe to the Culture Proof podcast. I do a weekly leadership blog that there is some form of rooting there on a mistake or something that I did in the past, and how we turn that into some form of a teaching. I think there's over 200 blogs in there now. So, make sure you jump in there and subscribe to that. And I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I try to respond to messages, but you can probably, best way is find me on my website. So.
Gotcha. Love it. Well, thanks again for being here today. Thank you guys for listening and watching this episode of the 5 Door Media podcast. This season is all about culture. And, somebody described culture to me. You want to know what your company culture is like? Ask your employees what they feel like on a Sunday night. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. What can you guys do on a Monday morning to really shape how you want your culture to feel this week coming up for your employees, for your staff, for your leadership? That's what I'm going to challenge you with. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. We got a long season talking about culture with some of the best and top home service business owners here in the country. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.